Today's the day, folks. Starlink Standard Gen 3 versus the Starlink Mini. If you're like me, you've been trying to figure out which of these dishes you should go with, which plan you should go with, depending on your needs. Maybe you're an RVer, maybe you're an overlander, or maybe you have an off-grid cabin, or maybe you just don't have immediate access to internet where you are. Well, in this video, I'm going to share all of the differences between these two dishes in hopes to help you decide which one you should go with. We'll talk about the cost, size, and portability, of course, speed performances, some of the things that come with each of them, and we'll also talk about the power consumption as well. And then towards the end of this video, I'll share which one would work best for you depending on your setup. So let's start off with size and portability. And this one's pretty obvious here when you're just looking at it here on the table. The Starlink Mini is tiny. It is remarkably tiny at that. You can fit this in pretty much any backpack. I've had my laptop in certain backpacks and still have been able to fit this alongside with it. Of course, this varies based on your backpack, but even in my smaller Filson Journeyman, this fits quite well. The standard dish is significantly larger, at least 2 times the size, but approaching 3 as well. It's also much heavier, meaning that if you're someone who is very conscious about the weight that you're adding onto your rig, then the Mini might be the way to go since it is much lighter. And it is worth noting that with the standard dish, although it is still fairly lightweight, it's like kind of clunky to be taking around. You're certainly not going to throw this in your backpack. So it's definitely tailored more towards fixed locations like a cabin or maybe an RV rig where space is not really an issue. Whereas the Mini is tailored more towards mobility and the ability to really take it anywhere at any time. One of the major notable differences about these two dishes is the fact that the Mini has a router, a Wi-Fi 5 router built into it, whereas the Standard comes with a separate Wi-Fi 6 router. So the router that comes with the Standard is a bit better than the Wi-Fi 5 router on the Mini. However, it's a much more compact design, being that it is included inside of the actual dish. And the wiring is a bit different between these two, although the setup is very similar and ridiculously easy no matter which one you go with. But with the Starlink Mini, it's simply a DC plug that kind of handles the entire thing since the router and the dish are combined, whereas the Standard, the router and dish are separate. So you've got an Ethernet cable that also transfers power in between the dish and the router. When it comes to power consumption, in my opinion, this is one of the biggest differences between these two dishes, and I think it's extremely important, of course, for anyone who is off the grid or overlanding, car camping, that sort of thing. And the Mini uses nearly a quarter of the amount of power that the Starlink Standard Gen 3 dish uses. This comes in at around 80 watts on average, while the Mini comes in around 20 watts on average, so significantly less, and that also allows you to easily connect this to 12-volt devices like that found in many RVs. But beyond that, with the Mini, you can get an adapter that converts it to USB-C, plug that into a power bank, and you could pretty much take this anywhere and power it for hours. Of course, depending on the power bank size. But the Starlink Standard, that's going to be significantly more difficult to do that with. To me, this is a huge difference here. Maybe you are connected to the grid and that's a different story. However, if you're off grid and using solar power, then you're probably going to want to conserve as much energy as possible. I mean, if you've got a 100-watt panel, you're getting pretty close to using almost that entire power draw just on the Starlink Standard. And I've already had a moment where the Starlink Standard killed my battery because I just didn't believe that it used that much energy, but as it turns out, it definitely does. But let's just say that energy definitely has a purpose, which brings us to our next section, the speed tests. The first speed test, we got 120 over 23 and a 26 millisecond delay. Now let's switch to our Starlink Mini. The Starlink Mini got 121 over 21 with a 36 millisecond delay. The Starlink Standard just jumped up an insane amount. 369 over 19, a little slow on the upload speeds, and a 19 millisecond delay. 101 over 12 and a 24 millisecond delay. 120 over 6 with a 18 millisecond delay, switching to the Mini. All right, 103 over 18 and a 20 millisecond delay. 308 down over 13 up and a 22 millisecond delay. Switching to the Mini, we've got 143 down, 20 up, and 30 milliseconds. Speed tests are kind of difficult to do with Starlink because I found that they're so inconsistent time over time that I've never really been able to get consistent results. But what I have consistently gotten is that the Starlink Standard performs, at least on the download speed side, 20 to 30% on average much better than the Starlink Mini. The upload speeds, I have noticed far less of a difference, but it also is worth noting that the Starlink standard Wi-Fi 6 router is going to perform better than the Wi-Fi 5 router on the Starlink Mini. You could circumvent that by plugging directly in and hardwiring in using the Ethernet ports on these devices, and that's a good way to get them even closer in speeds. But then it comes down to cost, and that's another area where these two differ. The Starlink Standard, despite its size and speed, is still cheaper than the Mini, I guess because it's a bit older and you're paying really for the compact size and portability of the Mini. But it's sort of difficult to do in your head when you're getting a faster speed device that with a slower device, it's going to be more expensive. And this comes in at around $500. Sometimes I've seen it on sale for around $400, whereas this one is routinely on sale for around $350. Also, if you're going to do the residential plan, the Standard has a 12-month commitment contract that you'll actually get the dish for free. I believe you cannot change the service address though. But the fact that you're getting a higher end router with the Standard and that it's cheaper makes it all the more appealing. So then there's also these Starlink service plans, and I'm almost hesitant to say them in this video because it seems like everything always changes. But right now, these both have the roam plans, which means that you can use them in motion, take them anywhere, and they've got a 50 gigabyte and an unlimited version. The unlimited version right now is $165. However, as of right now, at least in the United States, at least where I am, you cannot use the residential plan on the Starlink Mini, but you can on the Starlink Standard. And this is really important for two reasons. One being the roam plans on both of these dishes are actually a deprioritized service plan from Starlink. And what that means is if you're in a congested area with a lot of Starlink users, well, then residential users are going to get faster speeds because it's a prioritized plan versus the roam, which is a deprioritized plan. If you have it in a fixed location, the residential plan is really a no-brainer. Plus, as of right now, the residential plan is $45 cheaper than the unlimited roam plan. So that's another big significant difference. You could also change the service address, meaning that if you're maybe camping or going somewhere for extended periods of time, you can change the service address and then also still be using the residential plan, save money, get the prioritized service plan, whereas you can't get the residential plan, at least now in the United States right now, with the Mini at all. Alright, so I know that was a lot of talking. Which one is the way to go? And it's really going to come down to what's most important to you. If you value a lower power consumption, less weight, compact size, significantly more portable, however slightly more expensive, you're not going to get the residential plan, at least not right now in the United States, and some speed performance as well, then the Starlink Mini is the way to go. So especially for the RVers and the car campers or overlanders where space is much more limited. But if you value better speed performance, lower cost overall, the ability to also have the residential plan on here and switch between the two, but at the cost of the portability, a much larger size, a heavier weight, and a much greater power consumption, then the Starlink Standard Gen 3 dish is the way to go. But I'm curious to hear from you. Are you Team Starlink Mini or the Standard? Let me know down in the comments, or let me know if you have any questions on these dishes, or if you got anything out of this video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. I'd greatly appreciate it, and subscribe if you are new here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you out there on the road.